Leave her. She's just another street girl looking for a reward. Please, the woman said quietly, her voice steady even as hands pushed her aside. He can't see. He's bleeding. The man on the ground reached out blindly, fingers scraping dust, his glasses cracked somewhere beyond reach. Cars honked. Someone laughed. Someone else said it wasn't their problem. Amina did not raise her voice. She knelt anyway. The heat of Ibadan pressed down like a held breath. The afternoon sun turned the red earth to powder, and the air smelled of roasted corn, diesel, and sweat. Amina's wrapper was already stained from the market, from lifting baskets for women who paid her in coins and insults. She tied the knot tighter at her waist and slid her arm under the stranger's shoulder, careful, respectful, as if she were lifting her own father. "Easy," she murmured to him, not to the men arguing over whether he was worth the trouble. "I've got you." He flinched at the sound of her voice, then stilled, listening. His eyes were open but unfocused, pale behind lashes dusted with grit. Blood ran from a cut above his temple, dark against skin that had never known the sun like this. "I can't see," he said, as if confessing something shameful. "They took my phone." "I know," Amina said. "Breathe." Someone scoffed. "You'll regret this." She did not look up. She braced her feet, felt the weight of him lean into her, and stood. It took strength she had learned early, carrying water, carrying grief, carrying other people's expectations. She guided him to the shade of a kiosk, sat him down, tore a clean strip from her underskirt without hesitation, and pressed it gently to his wound. He smelled expensive even under the dust. Soap that wasn't sold loose. A faint, bitter cologne. His shoes were ruined now, leather scuffed and torn, a detail that would matter later to men who counted things. Amina counted breaths. "Who are you?" he asked. "Amina." "Thank you," he said, the words careful, as if he was used to them being refused. "They said you were looking for a reward." She tied the cloth, firm but kind. "They say many things." A small crowd had formed, the way it always did when there was a story to be had. A boy darted forward and then back, eyes bright. An old woman clicked her tongue. A man with a scar on his cheek leaned in too close, measuring the stranger's watch with open hunger. Amina stood and put herself between them. She did not push. She did not shout. She simply stood, spine straight, eyes level, and waited. It worked. It always did. When the police arrived late and bored, they asked questions that floated away like smoke. The stranger answered when he could, voice even, accent clipped in a way that did not belong to the street. They took notes. They told Amina she could go. She went back to the market, hands still trembling. She sold the last of the tomatoes cheap because the day had shifted and she could feel it in her bones. She walked home through narrow lanes where the city softened into courtyards and laughter and the smell of pepper soup. She bathed with cold water from a bucket and scrubbed the dust from her feet. She fed her mother, who sat on a mat, legs folded, eyes sharp even in age. "You're late," her mother said. "I stopped," Amina said. That was all. Her mother watched her with the knowing silence of women who had learned not to pry. "Eat." That night, Amina slept without dreams. In the morning, the knock came. It was not a gentle knock. It was the kind that assumes you will answer. Amina opened the door to men in suits that did not belong to her street. Behind them, a car idled, black and clean, the engine whispering wealth. One man spoke with a practiced smile. "Are you Amina?" "Yes." "The gentleman you assisted yesterday wishes to see you." She did not ask which gentleman. She did not look past them at the car. She wiped her hands on her wrapper. "I have work." "He will compensate you," the man said, quickly. Amina met his eyes. "I did not help for compensation." A pause. Then another smile, thinner. "He would like to thank you. Personally." Her mother appeared at her shoulder, listening without seeming to. Amina nodded once. The house he brought her to did not sit. It commanded. High walls. Iron gates. Guards who watched without curiosity. Inside, coolness replaced heat. Marble under bare feet felt like a lie. The man from yesterday sat on a long sofa, posture careful, a white bandage clean against his temple. His eyes were still clouded, but his face was washed, the lines of it precise. He stood when he heard her enter. "Amina," he said. "You came." "Yes." He smiled, the kind that expected nothing back. "My name is Kunal Adeyemi." She had heard the name. Everyone had. You could not live in that city and not hear it. Factories, banks, philanthropy splashed across billboards. Rumors of cruelty whispered in queues. "I owe you my life," he said. She shook her head. "You fell. I helped you stand." "You stayed," he corrected. "Others did not." He gestured, and a woman appeared with a tray. Money lay on it, neat, insulting in its ease. Kunal's voice was calm. "Please accept this." Amina did not reach for it. She did not bow. She stood as she had stood in the street. "Give it to someone who needs it." The room seemed to tilt, just a little. The woman froze. The guards shifted. Kunal laughed softly. "You are different." She did not answer. "Sit," he said, not as a command but an invitation. She sat at the edge of the chair, hands folded. He spoke about the fall, about the men who had robbed him, about the doctor's warnings. He asked about her. She answered only what was asked. "Market. Mother. No father." "You are not married," he said. "No." "Would you consider—" He stopped. He took a breath. "Would you consider marrying me?" The room went silent in a way that pressed on the ears. The woman with the tray stared. A guard coughed. Amina's face did not change. Inside, something very still took note of everything. "You do not know me," she said. "I know enough," Kunal replied. "You are honest. You are brave. You did not take what was offered. I am blind, Amina. I need a wife I can trust." She stood. "I need time." "Of course," he said, quickly. "Take all the time you need." She left with the money still on the tray. Outside, the sun was sharp. The car drove her home. Neighbors stared. Amina walked into her house as if nothing had happened. She sat with her mother and told her everything without embellishment. Her mother listened, face unreadable. Then she said, "Men who ask quickly often hide impatience." Amina nodded. Over the days that followed, Kunal sent messages through intermediaries. Polite. Persistent. He sent food. He sent a doctor for her mother. He sent nothing that could not be refused. Amina refused nothing that helped her mother. She refused everything else. She visited his house again, at his request. She asked questions he did not expect. "How did you lose your sight?" "An illness," he said. "Years ago." "Who manages your accounts?" "My brother." "My lawyers." "Who benefits if you marry?" A pause. "My family. My companies. Stability." "And you?" Another pause. Longer. "Companionship." She watched his hands, the way they tightened and released. She listened to the silences more than the words. In the market, people talked. Some called her lucky. Some called her foolish. Men smiled at her with new interest. Women pulled her aside to whisper warnings dressed as congratulations. At night, Amina lay awake and thought of the way the crowd had laughed when he fell. Of the way money had been offered like an apology that expected acceptance. Of the way power moved, unseen, assuming. She agreed to the marriage a week later. The house filled with preparations. Tailors came. Aunties arrived from villages with opinions sharpened by distance. Kunal's family visited, their smiles assessing, their questions barbed. His brother, Tund, took her hand and held it a beat too long. "We are grateful," he said. "My brother has been vulnerable." Amina smiled back. "We all are." The wedding was small but loud in its own way. Cameras flashed. Words like fairy tale floated, weightless. Amina wore white and moved through it all like water, reflecting what was placed before her. That night, Kunal took her hands. "I promise to take care of you." She squeezed gently. "We will take care of each other." In the quiet after, when the house slept and the guards paced, Amina stood at the window and looked out at a city that did not know it had begun to turn. She thought of the day in the dust. of the voice that had told her to leave him, of the way no one had imagined she would remember. She closed the curtain. And she waited. And she waited. Marriage to Colonel Adeyemi did not arrive with tenderness. It arrived with structure. Schedules appeared where silence used to live. Staff learned her name quickly, then learned when to lower their eyes. Amina moved through the house slowly, deliberately, absorbing the rhythms of power the way some people learn music. She learned which footsteps meant impatience, which meant fear, which meant entitlement. She learned that blindness had not softened Colonel's authority. If anything, it had sharpened it. Men leaned closer when they spoke to him, voices respectful, careful not to offend a man who could ruin them without ever seeing their faces. At first, Colonel treated her like something precious and unfamiliar. He asked before touching her. He thanked her when she described the color of the sky, the pattern of light on the floor. He listened when she spoke about her mother, about the market, about the small humiliations that shaped ordinary lives. But gratitude has a shelf life when it sits next to money. It began quietly. A correction here. A suggestion there. You don't need to go to the market anymore, he said one morning, stirring his tea. It isn't appropriate. I like going, Amina replied. There's nothing there for you now. She nodded and went anyway. Then came the dinners with people whose laughter carried a sharp edge. Men who joked about women like inventory. Women who smiled with their teeth and measured Amina's worth in her silence. Colonel would squeeze her hand when they spoke too freely, as if to say, endure. She endured. At night, when the house settled, Colonel would ask her to read contracts aloud. He trusted her voice, he said. It grounded him. She read slowly, carefully, noting clauses that bent like reeds under pressure. She asked questions. He waved them away. Tund handles the details, Colonel said. My brother is loyal. Amina said nothing. She learned. She learned that Tund visited the factories unannounced and left with envelopes that did not belong to him. She learned that donations made in Colonel's name arrived late or not at all. She learned that the blindness everyone pitied had become convenient cover for many sins. One afternoon, Colonel's mother came to the house uninvited. Her perfume arrived before she did, heavy and expensive. She sat across from Amina and did not bother with pleasantries. You are quiet, she said. Too quiet. Amina poured tea. I listen. You should remember your place, the woman continued. You were chosen because you are simple. Don't forget that. Amina smiled softly. I won't. The woman leaned back, satisfied, and spoke about lineage, about expectations, about heirs. She spoke as if Amina were furniture that might produce grandchildren if treated correctly. After she left, Colonel reached for Amina's hand. She means well. Amina squeezed once. She worries. Yes, he said, relieved. He did not hear the door closing inside her. Weeks passed. The city hummed. Newspapers praised Colonel's resilience, his inspiring marriage to a woman who had saved him. His face appeared on screens, serious and composed. Amina stood beside him, eyes lowered, the picture of gratitude. Inside the house, the air grew tight. One evening, Colonel was angry. It arrived suddenly, like a storm that had been building unnoticed. A deal had fallen through. Voices rose. A glass shattered. Why didn't you tell me? He demanded. I read you the contract, Amina said evenly. You should have insisted. You told me to trust Tund. He turned his face toward her, eyes pale, unfocused. Do not speak to me like that. The room went still. Staff froze. Amina felt something settle in her chest, heavy and calm. I'm sorry, she said. He exhaled, tension draining. I don't want to fight. Neither do I. That night, she did not sleep. She sat at the table with papers spread before her, listening to the house breathe. She copied numbers by hand, slowly, carefully. She memorized names. She made no calls. In the morning, she took food to her mother, who now lived in a small house nearby, paid for by Colonel's generosity. You look thin, her mother said. I'm fine. Her mother studied her. When a river goes quiet, it is choosing a path. Amina kissed her forehead. I know. The first test came without warning. Kunnel hosted a charity gala, one of many. Cameras. Speeches. Applause measured to the second. Amina stood beside him as donors praised his integrity. Then a young woman approached them, eyes bright with hope. "Sir," she said to Kunnel, "thank you for the scholarship. It changed my life." Kunnel smiled, practiced. "I'm glad." She turned to Amina. "Your husband saved our school." Amina returned the smile. "I'm happy for you." Later in the car, Amina asked gently, "Which school was that?" Kunnel frowned. "What do you mean?" She said the scholarship saved their school. "Oh," he said, dismissive. "Tund handles those." Amina looked out the window as the city slid past. She thought of the girl's gratitude, of the money that had never arrived. She thought of the word saved, stretched thin. She began to visit places alone. Kunnel did not notice at first. He was busy, surrounded. She told him she was shopping, visiting her mother, attending women's meetings. All true in their way. She went to the school. She spoke to the principal, to teachers who smiled nervously when she asked about funding. She went to clinics, to factories. She listened more than she spoke. She asked for receipts. She took notes in a small book she kept hidden under her clothes. People underestimated her easily. She dressed simply. She spoke softly. She did not threaten. Doors opened. Tund noticed eventually. "You're very active," he said one afternoon, leaning against the doorway of Kunnel's study. "People talk." Amina smiled. "They always do." "You should be careful," he continued. "This world isn't kind to women who ask questions." She met his gaze, unblinking. "Neither is ignorance." He laughed, sharp. "You think you're smarter than us?" "No," she said. "I think I'm patient." That night, Kunnel asked her why Tund was upset. "He worries," Amina replied. "About your reputation." Kunnel sighed. "He does so much for me." "I know." Weeks turned into months. The house grew used to Amina's comings and goings. Guards stopped watching her closely. Staff relaxed. She became part of the background, reliable, unthreatening. She learned how to record conversations without being seen. She learned how to forward documents quietly. She learned which journalists still believed in stories, not favors. She did not rush. The breaking point came on a humid evening when Kunnel announced a public address. Another charity event. Another speech about integrity. Amina stood beside him on the stage, lights hot on her face. As Kunnel spoke, she listened to the cadence of his voice, confident, reassuring. She thought of the men in the market who had laughed when he fell. She thought of the way power assumes blindness means weakness. When he finished, applause thundered. Amina stepped forward, surprising everyone, including Kunnel. She took the microphone. Her voice was calm. "I would like to speak," she said. The room hushed. Kunnel reached for her arm. She squeezed his hand gently, the way she always did. "I want to thank you," she continued, eyes scanning the crowd, "for trusting my husband." Faces softened. Cameras leaned in. "And I want to thank those who believed in his charities," she went on. "Because belief deserves honesty." A ripple of unease moved through the room. Amina smiled. "Over the past months," she said, "I have learned a great deal about generosity. About where money goes. And where it does not." Kunnel stiffened. "Amina," he whispered. She did not look at him. "I have documents," she said calmly, "that show funds redirected. Scholarships promised and never delivered. Donations that disappeared." Gasps. Murmurs. Tund shifted in the crowd. "I have names," Amina continued, "and records. I have shared them with the appropriate authorities." The room erupted. Voices overlapped. Cameras flashed wildly. Kunnel stood frozen, blind eyes wide, listening to the sound of his world cracking. Amina turned to him then, her voice soft enough only he could hear. "I saved you once," she said. "This time, I'm saving the truth." She stepped back, letting the noise swell around her, letting the consequences unfold without her guidance. And as the crowd unraveled, Amina stood still, composed, the quiet center of a storm she had chosen carefully, patiently, long before anyone imagined she could. The sound did not fade quickly. It climbed the walls, spilled into corridors, followed Amina as security moved too late and too uncertainly. Someone shouted her name with anger. Someone else shouted it with awe. Cunnel did not move. He stood where she left him, hands trembling at his sides, listening to the collapse of certainty he had built his life on. They escorted her out gently, not knowing whether to restrain or respect her. Outside, night air pressed cool against her skin. She breathed once, deeply, and felt nothing like triumph. Only release. By morning, the city had chosen its version of events. Headlines did not ask questions, they accused. Some called Amina a gold digger with a plan. Others called her a brave woman who had done what men around Cunnel had refused to do. Videos spread. Clips replayed her calm voice over and over, dissected for hidden emotion that was not there. Cunnel did not speak publicly. His lawyers did. Tund disappeared before noon. The house grew quiet in a different way now. Staff whispered. Phones rang unanswered. Guards stood stiff, unsure who they protected anymore. Amina walked its halls as she always had, slow and deliberate, as if nothing had changed. She cooked for Cunnel herself that evening, the way she had in the early days, pounding pepper, stirring egusi, grounding herself in familiar motion. He did not eat much. He sat at the table, head bowed, fingers tracing the grain of the wood. "Did you plan this from the beginning?" he asked finally. Amina served him water. "No." "Then when?" She sat across from him. "When I realized saving a man does not mean saving what surrounds him." Silence stretched. He swallowed. "My brother," he began. "Is not a child," she replied. "And neither are you." He nodded once, a small movement heavy with understanding. "You humiliated me." "I protected others," she said. "The humiliation belongs to the lies." Another silence. This one sharper. "You could have told me," Cunnel said. "I tried," Amina answered. "You did not hear." His jaw tightened. "You used my blindness against me." "No," she said quietly. "I refused to let it be used against everyone else." That night, Cunnel slept alone for the first time since their wedding. Amina lay awake in the other room, listening to the house adjust to its new shape. Days followed with the patience of inevitability. Investigations were announced. Accounts frozen. Former allies distanced themselves with statements carefully scrubbed of loyalty. Cunnel's mother arrived again, fury stripped of perfume this time. "You have destroyed this family," she hissed. Amina met her gaze evenly. "I revealed it." The woman raised her hand, then thought better of it with cameras outside the gate and staff watching. She laughed instead, brittle. "You think you've won?" Amina did not answer. Cunnel withdrew into meetings and consultations, his voice often low and hoarse from speaking too long without resolution. He asked Amina to sit with him sometimes, to read documents, to interpret the mood of rooms he could not see. She did, when she could. She did not argue. She did not apologize. One afternoon, as rain softened the city into a blur of gray, Cunnel spoke the words that had been circling them both. "You don't have to stay," he said. Amina closed the file she was reading. "I know. I will not stop you," he added. "If you leave, I will make sure you are taken care of." She looked at him then, really looked, at the man she had lifted from the dust. "I was never here to be taken care of." His mouth curved in a sad half-smile. "Of course." They sat together in the sound of rain. Outside, the world adjusted again. Amina began to receive messages from women she did not know. Some thanked her. Some warned her. Some asked how to do what she had done without being destroyed by it. She replied to none of them immediately. Instead, she went back to the market one morning, wrapped in plain cloth, her hair covered. People stared, unsure how to greet a woman who had walked into power and out again without breaking stride. She bought tomatoes. She greeted vendors by name. She carried her bag herself. A young girl approached her shyly. "Are you really her?" she asked. Amina smiled. "I am me." The girl nodded, satisfied somehow, and ran off. At home, Kunnel's house became less of a fortress and more of a shell. Rooms closed. Staff reduced. Silence learned new shapes. Kunnel asked Amina one evening if she would consider counseling together, as if marriage were a business that might yet be salvaged. She considered. Then she said, no. He accepted it with surprising grace. The legal consequences unfolded slowly, deliberately, the way true justice often does. Tund was found. Charges were read. Names were named. Kunnel was cleared of direct wrongdoing but stained by proximity. His empire shrank, then steadied, reshaped by necessity rather than excess. Through it all, Amina remained calm. She attended hearings when summoned. She answered questions without flourish. She let others raise their voices. One evening, Kunnel asked her to sit with him in the courtyard. Night insects sang. The city hummed beyond the walls. You saved me twice, he said. Once from the street. Once from myself. Amina folded her hands. I saved what needed saving. And what about us? He asked. She stood. We were never the point. He nodded, a man learning how to let go without sight. The next morning, Amina packed her things. Not many. Clothes. Her small book. Letters from her mother. She left no note. At the gate, Kunnel stood, guided by a staff member. He reached out, and she took his hand one last time. Thank you, he said. She squeezed gently. Take care. She walked out without looking back. The house closed behind her, and with it, a chapter the city would talk about for years. Amina stepped into a life that did not belong to anyone else's story anymore. And somewhere in the noise of opinion and judgment, something quieter began to grow. Something quieter began to grow, but it did not announce itself. It did not ask permission. Amina moved back into her mother's house without ceremony. The walls were thin, the neighbors close, the mornings loud with radios and argument and laughter. It felt real in a way marble never had. She slept deeply for the first time in months. People still came looking for her. Journalists first, then activists, then men with ideas that sounded like opportunities but smelled like control. She turned them all away with the same calm politeness. She was not interested in becoming a symbol. Symbols were owned too easily. She spent her days walking. She walked through markets where women haggled with sharp joy. She walked past clinics where mothers waited with tired hope. She walked through half-finished schools with peeling paint and teachers who still showed up. She listened. Always listening. Her mother watched her with quiet approval. One evening, as they ate from the same bowl, she said, "You left power without fear." Amina shrugged. "It wasn't mine." Her mother smiled. "That's why it couldn't hold you." Word spread slowly, the way true stories do when they don't need exaggeration. A woman who knew contracts. A woman who asked questions without anger. A woman who understood how money moved and how silence protected it. Amina began helping without creating a name for what she was doing. She helped a women's cooperative set up proper accounts so no one could steal from them again. She helped a clinic track donations so they arrived where they were promised. She taught girls how to read documents, how to notice the spaces where truth usually hid. She never stood at the front of a room. She sat among them. Sometimes, late at night, Kunnel crossed her mind. Not with longing. With clarity. She wondered how a man learned to rebuild when the scaffolding of illusion was taken away. She hoped he would learn. Once, months later, she heard his voice on the radio. He was speaking carefully, publicly, about restructuring, about accountability, about listening more than speaking. His voice sounded older. She turned the radio off. Life did not soften for her because she had done something brave. Men still underestimated her. Officials still tried to dismiss her. Some women resented her calm, mistaking it for judgment. Amina accepted all of it as weather. The real test came quietly. A foundation reached out, one with international funding and impressive language. They wanted her on the board. They wanted her face. They wanted her story. She attended one meeting. The room was cold with air conditioning and ambition. Men spoke over one another about impact and optics. When she asked about local oversight, the room shifted. "We'll handle that," one man said smoothly. Amina smiled. That's what they always say. The silence that followed was thick. She declined the offer the next day. Instead, she did something smaller. She pooled resources with other women and bought a modest building near the market. They painted it themselves. They filled it with tables and chairs and old computers. They called it nothing special. Women came anyway. They learned how to read contracts, how to ask for receipts, how to follow money without fear, how to leave marriages that felt like cages, how to stay in ones that didn't. Amina never stood in front. She moved between them, correcting here, encouraging there, never claiming credit. One afternoon, a young woman asked her, "How did you know when to speak?" Amina considered the question. When silence started protecting the wrong people. The city changed, slowly, in ways that didn't make headlines. Clinics stopped closing unexpectedly. Schools began receiving what was promised. Men learned to be more careful, not because they were better, but because someone was watching. Amina did not watch from above. She watched from inside. Years later, she passed a man in the street who stumbled. Without thinking, she reached out, steadying him. He thanked her and moved on, never knowing who she was. She smiled to herself. At home that evening, her mother sat beside her, braiding her hair with practiced hands. "Do you regret it?" she asked softly. Amina shook her head. "No." "Do you miss him?" A pause. Then, "I miss who I thought he was." Her mother nodded. "That's human." Outside, the city breathed, full and imperfect. Amina lay down that night and thought of the girl who had asked if she was really her. She thought of the blind man in the dust. She thought of the moment she had taken the microphone and felt no fear. She understood then that revenge had never been her goal. Balance had. She had not raised her voice. She had not struck a blow. She had simply refused to carry other people's lies. And that, she knew, was enough. Somewhere, someone would hear her story and look differently at the quiet woman in the room. Someone would hesitate before dismissing a voice that did not shout. Someone would learn that power does not always arrive loudly, and justice does not always demand celebration. Sometimes, it just asks you to stand still, to remember, and to choose the right moment to speak. And when that moment comes, will you recognize it?